Okay, so now you can see the article that you heard from the audio. How many credit cards should you have? Okay, now look at the first paragraph and you can find the sentence that says, many Americans carry 4 or 5 credit cards, but others have more than 10. So I want you to try to make a question using that sentence. So the answer is 4 or 5 credit cards, but others have more than 10. So that's the answer. So make a question, and if you need help, you can look at the title. Okay, so we can ask, how many credit cards do many Americans carry? Okay, how many credit cards do many Americans carry? Or you can say have. How many credit cards do many Americans have? Okay, and so the answer is many Americans carry 4 or 5 credit cards, but others have more than 10. Okay, and then now I want you to look at the second paragraph and the last sentence. Second paragraph, last sentence. It says, it's also difficult to keep track of so many cards. Okay, so I want you to look at the phrase, keep track of. Okay, do you know what that means? So it means to follow or keep up with, or keep a record of. So it's also difficult to keep track of so many cards. So when you have too many cards, it's hard to follow your spending or payments on each one, and you might forget something. Okay, so now look at the last paragraph, starting with debt counselors say. Okay, so the second sentence says, use one card for everyday living expenses and keep the other one for emergencies. Okay, so I want you to use that sentence and make a question. Use one card for everyday living expenses and keep the other one for emergencies. Let's make a question. Okay, so if you look at the sentence before that sentence, it says, debt counselors say that it's a good idea to have at least 2 cards. So we might ask, what should we use the 2 cards for? What should we use the 2 credit cards for? Since it mentioned that we should have at least 2 cards. So what should we use those or the 2 cards for? Okay? Now, I want you to go ahead and look at page 85, exercise 2. Page 85, exercise 2. Write 4 tips for using credit cards, okay, and use the information from the article. So you can see that the first tip is choose credit cards with low interest rates. So if you look back at the article, in the last paragraph, around the middle, you'll see they suggest choosing credit cards with low interest rates, and so on. And in the article, you can see that it uses a gerund form. So after suggest, we use a gerund. So it says they suggest choosing credit cards with low interest rates. But since we are not including the part about suggesting, you can just use the original verb. So choose credit cards with low interest rates. Okay, that means the second tip is, keep your account balance low. Keep your account balance low. And then the third tip, always try to pay more than just the minimum payments. Okay, always try to pay more than just the minimum payments. And the last tip is have no more than 6 cards. have no more than 6 cards. Okay, so let's go ahead and look at exercise 3, match. So you'll see the compound nouns that we talked about earlier, and I want you to match them and then use the compound nouns to complete exercises 4 and 5. Okay, so exercise 3, number 1, minimum payment. Okay, so letter E. Number 2, credit card, so letter A. Number 3, interest rate, so letter D. Number 4, debt counselor, letter C. And number 5, family budget, letter B. So we're going to use those words to complete exercise 4. Number 1, I don't have any credit cards. Number 2, the interest rate is very high. Number 3, we always make a family budget. Number 4, what is the minimum payment? And number 5, why don't you talk to a debt counselor? Okay, and we're also using those words to complete exercise 5. So let's look at number 1. I canceled my credit card because the interest rate was over 25%. Number 2, we made a family budget. Now we can save enough every month. Number 3, when you use a credit card, you borrow money and pay it back later. Number 4, we talked to a debt counselor to help us solve our financial problems. And number 5, the smallest payment you can make each month is the minimum payment. Okay, so we are finished with lesson D. Now for homework, I want you to go back to your student's book on page 91. Student's book, page 91. So look at exercise C, okay, exercise 3C. And I want you to answer questions number 2 and 4. So number 2, what things do you usually use a credit card to pay for? Okay, so maybe in your case, you use a credit card to pay for everything. And then some people use a credit card for certain things and then cash for other things. So answer that question, and you can also include the reason. And then number 4, do you think credit cards are helpful or harmful? Why? So for this question as well, maybe you think they are mostly helpful or mostly harmful, or maybe a little bit of both. So answer that question and explain why you think that way. So you can email those to me as usual. And for our next lesson, we will finish Unit 7. Okay, I'll see you next time.